Due diligence is essentially what an investor goes through when they're getting to know your company and deciding if they're going to invest. Typically, I would say you want to limit the number of people that are doing deep due diligence. So as I'm going through these due diligence checklists, this is not something you would prepare for everybody that you're having coffee with. It would be the larger investor who's maybe going to lead you around that would go to this level of diligence. I think it's really rare that an individual angel, unless they're maybe writing $250K or more type of check, would go super, super deep. There is a handout that you have that I think is a little bit easier to read that has, so if you flip past the page that says due diligence organization, there's a couple pages in your binder that say data room information request list. So I'm not going to go through any of this in detail, but this is typically when you have like a lead investor who's wanting to put a substantial amount of money in your company. This is kind of the structure that the areas that they look at when they're wanting to invest in your company. And I think it's important to, before you go out for a fundraise, really get your ducks in order and get everything organized. And I would say this is good corporate housekeeping as well. This isn't just about fundraising. This is like how you manage your business and can everything be found in one place. So I would say earlier in your company history, if you're able to get organized and stay organized, it will benefit you long term, because there's going to be times that you're going to need these documents over and over and over. And so if you just have a habit of having them all in a central spot, it will save a lot of time down the road. This is an organizational structure that I think is really helpful to think about. So on the left-hand side, most of the time people are using Box or Dropbox to organize their company files. The reason being that these are platforms that can be shared very easily with most investors. There's a bunch of other file sharing software out there. What I find is most investors don't want to sign up for a new service, but they typically have been using Dropbox for a very long time. So what you'd want to do is create master folders within your, like Dropbox file for corporate management, employees, metrics, financials, market, customers, products, etc. So going down the list. And then on the right-hand side, this would match kind of a diligence list where you would start to kind of create a library saying, this is where you can find everything within my master document. This is helpful so that you don't have a lot of back and forth with, like, if you're doing a Series A, for example, there'll be like 3 to 5 analysts that are working towards like digging through all of your information. So if you're able to say, here it is, provide them a master folder kind of directory saying this is where you can find everything, it helps like there not be a lot of back and forth. It allows you to be running your business, not talking to an analyst every day trying to find documents for them to look at. So overall, just great organizational structure is helpful. I think just a couple best practices. When you are starting to talk to multiple investors, I suggest that you create a folder for each investor that you share material with. What you'll find is, I found this really valuable to even put the pitch deck I was using to talk to each investor. So in my Dropbox, I would have, maybe 10 folders with every single investor I talked to would have their own folder. And I would start to pull documents that I had been emailing to them, because early on they'll say, hey, email me your pitch deck. Hey, email me your latest sales numbers. Hey, email me this. And what you find is that those documents start to change quickly. And they say, hey, I'm looking at page 4 of your deck. And you're thinking, what deck did I send them? I'm now on version 10 and I have no idea what's on page 4. So that can just save you some time as far as what information that you gave them by creating these separate folders. Also, once you have this like master diligence mega folder, you don't necessarily want to share all that information with very many people. I kind of say it's on request only that you would share that. And you wouldn't want competing investors to be shared on the same file, because like for a Dropbox, you can usually see who also has access to that folder. It's not a helpful thing to see that there's 6 other people digging around in your Dropbox. I think it actually shows the kind of immaturity that you're not managing the diligence process very well. So that's where creating those separate folders is really important. I think also you should be pretty far along before you get into actually sharing diligence. I would go as far as like, you're not really showing all of this until you have some sort of term sheet with them. Because a lot of it is very proprietary, and when I feel like you get to that level, it's worth kind of opening, you have a trusted relationship at that point. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to like overshare all these company documents. The other thing to try to manage against is, ideally, you only want to be going through deep diligence with one group rather than 2, 3, 4 groups. The amount of time it takes just to answer investor questions can be pretty cumbersome. So ideally, you would find a lead investor that would be in charge of the diligence, and their team would do everything, do all the diligence review, and then all the other investors would rely on that lead investor's diligence review and say, I trust you have a lead and that they're diving in. I'm not going to dive in and do the same amount of legwork of going through all your documents. That's a very, very quick overview on due diligence. Questions, comments? Kip.
The process of, as you particularly here in Des Moines, again, smaller pool, I'm meeting people that are in the investment community. I need ideally that lead investor. How do you make that decision? How do you approach that? Because is that a different approach?
You know what, we're going to get to that a little bit later when we talk about if you have a lead or if you don't have a lead. So
Okay.
We'll definitely be spending at least 5 minutes on that later.